Peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your hearts be troubled. Don't be afraid. And I'm scared to death. But I realize that I'm getting some answer now, then, that I'm going to be with you. Now, I did not know, I couldn't visualize that I'm going to be out there for 4.5 days. And so I get a hold of that rail, I climbed over the rail, and believe me that the deck of the ship now is like so. I actually stepped over the rail, and I stepped down in close to the water. I jumped in feet first. That cape-out jacket came up over my head, and now I'm struggling to get my head over that oil to swim away. I'm going to back up just a bit. When I said I don't want to die, I realized that I have mom and dad back home. I have 6 younger brothers. I have a younger sister and an older sister. And even as an 18-year-old boy, there was a certain brunette that said that she would wait for me. Now, I have to tell you, she waited. 1947, she was still waiting. We were married. This past July the 25th was 66 years ago. I kissed her goodbye at 11:30 today. She waited. Okay, now I'm in the water. I'm swimming. I swam out to the first group that was out there, and the best we could count off and all, there was maybe 80 of us. There were 2 other Marines. One had gone into the water head first, and you can imagine, if you stuck your head down in salt water with a ½ inch oil on it, and now you're up, how are you going to get that oil out? You aren't. And then you rub it, you rub it, you rub that oil in, and then that salt water, you look up at that 110-degree sun, and that salt water now becomes salt crystals. And now what are you doing? You're rubbing that in your eyeballs. Spooner, by the second day, he could not blink his eyes. 2 big sores. Spooner was my buddy the whole time out there. There was another Marine. When I'm in the group, any Marines, any Marines, any Marines. There were 2 Marines. I went to the other Marine, and he had been blown against the bulkhead. He had multiple breaks in his body. He only lasted maybe 2 hours. And so Spooner and myself, the only 2 Marines now. And so we are struggling to swim, to stay together with nothing but a K-Lock life jacket. And so we go through the rest of that night. We call that the first night before now the first day. The first day comes, in other words, next morning, we'd lost several boys. Many had been injured and they didn't make it through the night. And some did not have life jackets and they're hanging on to a buddy. And then even the first day, may I say we had company? When I say we had company, at any given time there that first day, you could see a big fin cutting through the water, swimming around the group, and you can imagine the hysteria that they were causing. They were not, out of fairness to them, they were not attacking us. Well, just imagine, here you're swimming and there's sharks all around you. And it isn't long, even that first day, that even though we tried to stay together, it's difficult. You know, we're in 10 or 12 foot swells, so all of you, you go up on a swell and that swell breaks away, you're scattered. By now, you're on the next swell and you go up and you're scattered more. So in a few minutes' time, you know, you're scattered 200 or 300 yards. So we try to stay together, and finally we managed to get enough to get together that we would take our cape-on jackets and hook it onto a buddy and form a circle and try to keep everyone in the circle. And if we could do that, then we would go up on the swell and we'd kind of drift with the swell and we could pretty much hold together. But it isn't long, even that first day, that someone maybe has been injured, he's hallucinating, and he sees an oasis out there. He sees an island out there, and he wants you to go, and he nearly of persuasion enough that he could get someone to go with him. But if they don't go, he nevertheless is going to go. And so he gets out maybe 50, 100 yards or so, and you hear a blood-curdling scream, and you see that capot jacket go under. Then somewhat like a fish cork, then that capot jacket brings that body back to the surface. You dare not go out to see who your buddy might be, because by now there's several sharks with all the blood. So you steer clear of that. In fact, you try to go another direction. Sometime later, maybe that body has drifted around and so on. You detect who that body might be. You take off his dog tags, you check him, and maybe you find that the bottom torso is gone, or he's been disemboweled. Now that's going to happen many, many times. Let's go through the first day now, and we go into the second night after the first day. If you can imagine, you're swimming nearly constantly 110 degrees, bareheaded, no water, thirsty. You think you've been thirsty. The second day, we've lost several, and we're struggling. We're struggling. And we had thought when we abandoned ship, we were to have met the USS Idaho. But somehow or another they miscued, and they were not looking for us. Therefore, no one reported that we aren't around. But may I say, okay, sometime that second day, we're desperate for water. And, you know, it didn't rain today, but it rained a little bit up in Clarksville yesterday. And it just reminded me, you know, you look out on a little rain shower that's coming over there on that second day. We're desperate for water, and to see a little rain cloud coming over, and you see, it's raining, look, it's raining, thank you, Lord, look, it's raining. And you wave your hands, and you are desperate, you know, for water. Okay. How much water can you catch in your big mouth? You take your greasy hands and you somewhat funnel it, and maybe you get a few tablespoons. We go through the second day, and now through that night. Now, the third day at noon, just to give you a little perspective, third day at noon, there are 17 of us. About 80 to begin with, 17. Now, I often say that there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole when there's danger around. And everyone would pray, or they would ask someone to pray for you. Well, there were 17 of us, and we looked and thought and realized we can't make it. Our kapok jackets by now are waterlogged and won't hold our heads out of the water. We're having to maybe take them off and sit in them and to continue to swim. Well, finally, you know, you have no energy. You cannot just continue. You try. But may I say, it's much easier to die than it is to live, believe me. And many would give up. I shook many a boy that his head is already dropped in the water to have him to raise up, and basically he could care less. I can't make it. I don't care, leave me alone. Okay, we had a little prayer meeting when there was only 17 of us, and we were desperate. We have to get close enough to the Philippines, we thought. We see planes flying over 30,000 feet. No one's looking for us. They didn't even know we were out there. They didn't know we were shipwrecked. And we see them B-29s maybe bombarding Tokyo. No one's looking for us. And so we are desperate. So sometime then that third day, about 1 o'clock or so in the afternoon, I still have the watch in the museum in Indianapolis that I was wearing, so I know about what time it was there. And we were desperate there that third day at noon. And we have had a prayer meeting. And just to give you an example of a prayer, I remember this one sailor, God, if you're out there, I don't want to die. I've got a son back home that I've never seen. God, you've got to help us. We can't make it any longer. There were some of us that knew to whom we were praying, and if we prayed, we would be asked to pray for so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, even praying for the families back home. So it was sometime then, about 1 o'clock there that third day, when there's 17 of us. We're desperate. We're seated in our K-Pop life jackets, and we're having to swim. We're having to swim, or else there's enough buoyancy in the jacket that it pitches you over in the water. Now, you know what it is to get an inner tube to put under you out in a swimming pool, but you can imagine if you have no strength, get that K-Pop jacket back down under you, and then just continue to swim and try to keep your head above the water. Try not to drink any of the salt water. Try not to allow any of that salt water to splash in your face, get in your nostrils. You partake of a little bit of that, and then that salt water, after a little bit, it begins to play tricks. So it was sometime about 1 o'clock there that third day, when there's only 17 of us, that we came up on the swell and we said, look, look, there's a raft. And it was a raft. And we could see that they were at a distance, a couple of 100 yards, but we could holler at them and they could respond in English, so we knew it had to be our buddies. And so they're making their way to come into us. They kind of came in by voice because the swells are 10 feet or so, and so there's times you can't even see it. And then finally they get closer and closer, and they came into our group. And may I say, no one was on the raft. Yes, there was a raft. There were 5 sailors around that raft. They weren't on it. They were around that raft. But what was on the raft was the one thing that we desperately needed. That was K-Pop life jackets. Believe me, you know, no sponge won't hold any more water. It will if you squeeze it out. And those 5 sailors had taken K-Pop jackets off of boys already expired, got their dog tags, and committed them to the sea. They took those K-Pop jackets, and 2 of them could take those and squeeze them in the opposite direction and squeeze that water out and put them on that raft, and we had a spare tire. They came into our group. They said, we've got to get closer to the Philippines. We see planes every day. No one's looking for us. And they said, anyone want to join you? And I say to my Marine buddy Spooner, I said, Spooner, I'm going to go with him. He said, Harrell, if you go, I'm going with you. 2 Marines joined 5 sailors. And would you believe it that we're going to swim to the Philippines, we think. My other 15 sailors, they said, you're crazy. You can't. We didn't know how far it was. We didn't know that it was another 500 miles. But we knew we had to do something. When there was 80, third day at noon, there's 17, there's time that you've got to do something. And so 2 Marines joined 5 sailors, and we put our arm kind of up on that. Now, that raft consisted of 3 or 4 40-millimeter ammunition cans, which are good flotation devices. There was 3 or 4 like orange crates, slatted orange crates, slatted potato crates, and they had lashed those together and squeezed out those K-Pop jackets, and they were on that raft. And so we have a spare tire. So Spooner and I joined them. We exchanged life jackets. We put on one that at least is a little more buoyancy. And I can see myself today hanging onto the corner of that raft and plugging away, renewed energy. You know where there's hope? There's hope. And there was renewed hope. And we are struggling. We're struggling. And sometime then later that afternoon, we realized that, you know, the sun goes down in the west. Someplace over there, a few hundred miles maybe, is the Philippines. We've got to get close enough to the Philippines that someone will spot us. And so we're plugging away. Sometime then, later in the afternoon, we see, you know, it's overcast. There isn't any sun. It's cloudy. And before night, we knew that it was going to be dark tonight. And then we're plugging away with that raft, making some time, making some headway. And then we came up on a swell, and I looked off to the starboard at a distance, maybe 100 yards or so, and there was some debris out there that was floating up and down in 10 or 12 foot swells. And I called attention to that out there, and I said, look, there's something out there. And what is the possibility there could be? Food or water? And I said, look, there's an old crate or something out there. I'm going to swim out and get that. And they said, yeah, the shark will get you too. And I said, we haven't seen any sharks lately at least. And there was a compelling influence say, go and see what that might be. And so I put my K-Buck jacket on, and I'm dog paddling, and I swam out to that, whatever that was. And as I got closer and closer, I'm praying for food. I'm praying for water. I know that I'm not going to make it without some help from above, so to speak. And as I saw that, could I say, as I saw that old potato crate, I got 6 feet or so from that, and I saw those potatoes kind of floating in that crate. In desperation, I'm thanking the Lord. I reached in for that first potato, and as I got a hold of that, kind of in the agony of defeat, as I squeezed that, you know, it was rotten, and all of that rot squeezed between my fingers, and I thought, rotten potatoes. But as I squeezed it, it was solid on the inside. Now, you ladies know what rotten potatoes smell like. I know what they taste like. To take that potato and peel it with my hands, and then I peel it with my teeth, and you don't spit out all the rot. You're desperate for water. There was solid potato on the inside. There was food. There was water. I began to think like the ant. I may be out here for another period of time, and I peeled off several of those, and I filled my dungaree pockets full. And then with my arm up on that potato crate, many more potatoes in there, I'm plugging away to get back my buddies. I got close enough they could see, you know, maybe I'm eating something. What is it? Rotten potatoes. It doesn't matter. They left that raft and they swam out and they met me. Now all we had was half-rotten potatoes, but we had a little food, we had a little water. And then we're struggling now still. We realize that it's overcast, it's going to be dark,